Our next question is from a person on YouTube going by the name Dazerstar. And this is my second attempt to try to be of assistance to other people and to learn myself by answering questions. I thought the questions would all be relevant to our group thought experiment. However, I now realize that that is not the case. And so we're rolling with it. Apparently, there are some things and methods in which I need to develop. Okay, so the question from Dazer is, I'm going to paraphrase, how can we be sure that what we are contacting is what it says it is? I'll have to admit I need some clarification here on the question. There are two different ways we could go with this. The first question appears to be, well, what I believe the question is I believe this person is referring to our group thought energy experiment, which has been occurring now for 2 weeks. But then they also could be asking, how do you know that whatever you're communicating with is who and what you are communicating with? Give me a second first. I'm going to go ahead and leave this plain. I'm going to address the questions in reverse because I'm not quite sure which one is correct. And I realized once the questions come in, I would like to complete them so as to not feel as if I have not completed my tasks for the day. Okay, if the question is relative to the stream that is in front of us, that is streaming on YouTube and has been for almost 2 weeks now, I would like to begin by saying that it is an experiment. It is also an experiment under development. Under development means I am not making any special claims as to who exactly we are talking to or what exactly we are listening to. By coming and participating in the stream or the group thought energy experiment, which is what it is currently represented as, anybody that participates, they are taking with a grain of salt the things that I have been telling you, essentially. So there's a little bit of a trust involved that when I say that this is a radio tune sitting in my attic, with a cable running to a computer, which then filters the audio, which I've demonstrated on this stream live. And then the end result is what we see and hear on this screen. Then there's a certain amount of openness that is needed and required from the people that join and participate in the experiments. That being said, these experiments did not happen overnight. We've been doing experimentation with radio since 2006. I started out with EVP in 2005. I began to hear voices in white noise in the radio static. I then began to pursue it and feel and know that there was more to it than originally meets the eye. Excuse me for a second. Dog wanted to be let in. Okay, so there have already been thousands upon thousands of hours invested into this radio and the equipment and the software that you see in front of you prior to us ever launching a YouTube stream. Now, how can we know that what we are contacting is what it says it is? Well, there is a basic understanding from my own perspective and individual experience that we are working with a team of people in spirit. However, I have not specifically stated who it is. I do not have a way of knowing exactly at this point in time who exactly is coming through the radio. I can give you conjectures and guesses about the possibilities and potentials for who those people may be. However, at this point in time, all I can classify them as are people that are non-physical. So non-physical personalities. You may call that people in spirit, but I would not limit the interpretation to the classical interpretation of people that have lived here on earth and died. So who is it exactly? I don't have a direct answer. I can tell you that it is what we refer to as a spirit team. How do we know it's them and what we're contacting? You got to be truthful on this one. You don't. This radio is wide open. Now there is an understanding, and this is kind of a gray area. I don't claim to be an expert at anything. This is personal experience. This is thousands of hours of personal experience that contribute to where we are today at this particular moment. When I turned the radio on in California, somebody started to try talking to it. It's all documented. It's still available online. And I didn't know anything about radio, and it took years for me to learn and understand some of the basic concepts presented in radio. I'm good with computers, but I wasn't good with radio and electronics, and still am not to most degrees. The more that I worked with these people that I can't see with my eyes, nor hear with my physical ear without electronics, the more pronounced the energy on the radio began to be. And so, as you can imagine, with that many hours of listening to people in spirit, as I'll refer to them as, I have heard many things. Not everything I hear is correct. Not everything I interpret is correct. However, the overall assessment from my personal point of view is that the more confident I have become in accepting my personal role and contribution of providing a radio experiment for people in spirit to be able to work on, the more effective the experiments have been. That was a very long answer, and it probably isn't exactly the answer that you were looking for. Now let's go down the other road that many people are probably waiting for. How can we be sure that what we are contacting is what it says it is? It reminds me of the old phrase repeated quite often. Test the spirits, they say. And I couldn't even give you the source. I just know that it's there. There is a requirement to working with both spirit and ITC, or instrumental transcommunication, which is what this work is defined as. The requirements are, let's not say requirements. Let's say the things that should be in place are an understanding through research and education of the basics of life after death, an understanding that we have the ability to work together with people in spirit to communicate, an understanding, most importantly, of the lesson of intent. What do you intend to do? Why are you doing what you're doing? What is your intent as you do your experiments? There is also a psychological aspect that needs to be taken into consideration that is not spoken of frequently. And I am also not the appropriate person to be giving lectures on psychology. I will say that I have firsthand experience with it. So I would say you need to be a balanced person. Are any of us perfectly balanced? Probably not. I'm certainly not. But you need to strive for balance. That means in every way, with discernment, with patience, with research, education, and persistence. So, to elaborate on the question, the phrase like attracts like comes to mind. How can we be sure that what we are contacting is what it says it is? There are many people that will disagree with me, and I cannot speak for everyone. I can only speak for myself, and I can say that I have not had any negative experiences with any entities, if you will. I've had one experience, but I'm not sure if it was negative or not. I attribute that to the thought process of setting the desire and the intent of wanting to evolve spiritually, wanting to assist mankind, wanting to create as a creator, because every person is a creator. Those are the basic ingredients. Not how much technical knowledge you have, not how many people we would like to impress. And I've gone through all these stages as most people do. There are stages where the ego has to be overcome. So this phrase, if it's not relative to the experiments that we're doing, it seems to be the type of question somebody would ask about a Ouija board. How can we be sure that what we are contacting is what it says it is? Well, I would say, given that you have taken proper precautions, and by precautions I mean, what do you do that prepares yourself mentally for communication with spirit? Are you just wide open? Or do you have an intent? Do you have a purpose? Do you have a focus? Now, I will give you some insight. I know I'm getting way off track, but there's a different answer to this question than what the obvious answer is. The question in this particular light is more along the lines of, how do you protect yourself? Is it necessary? And what would you do? So perhaps we'll save that for another question in the future. Let's see. I would say the answer to this is kind of obvious. How can we be sure that what we are contacting is what it says it is? Let's look at the question. First of all, what it says it is implies you know who it is, right? If you know who it is, that implies you have a clear connection. If you have a clear connection, then you have the ability to ask for evidence and verify. So the question itself is leads you to the own answer. And the answer is, if you are working with a non-physical personality and you have received evidence or communication that leads you to the point where you would like to confirm who that energy is and what their goals and desires are, then I would say follow the old adage of test the spirits. I wouldn't call them spirits. It sounds, it's already got a bad connotation. I do say people in spirit. I don't say spirits. Spirits, I think of spirits as something you drink. So I would say, final answer, if you wake up in the morning, if you focus on what it is that you want in life, if you reinforce the thoughts of who you are, what you're here to do, or even the openness to discovering what it is you are here to do, what you are here to learn, and you set your intent in a positive manner, not just for personal gain, not for the validation of other people, because none of that matters, and it will actually drive you in the opposite direction of seeking what you're looking for. If you wake up and you set that intent, the end result will match your intent. And so my final answer is, if you want to know that something or somebody is what they say they are, test them. But you should already know, to some degree, in most cases, there are always exceptions, You should already know what type of people in spirit you are attracting by the type of vibration that you are emanating. And so over a period of time, that is what you could come to expect. And I can tell you, I'll leave you with a few words of wisdom for personal experience, not from anybody else. If you want to communicate with life after death and pursue it to a certain degree, you must not be afraid. You must not be afraid at all. If you emanate fear, you will attract fear. And it is very common, and it has also not been publicly accepted, and it will come to be in the future. If you listen to audio that is hard to understand, kind of like what we do here on the stream, and if you listen to that extensively and you become physically tired, or you open yourself up to these different vibrations, you will find that you will put yourself in a weak place psychologically or spiritually. Perhaps it's your aura. I'm not quite sure. It's very important to balance yourself, to get sleep, to not overdo it, to not listen too hard and have your brain try too much to try to make sense out of something that is not intelligible, which many people are going to think is quite ironic, because a lot of what we do on this experiment, some of it I will transcribe, and I suspect that many people will not hear what I will hear. We'll leave that for another discussion. And that was the very, very, very long answer to a question of which I was not sure from Dazzler Star. Thank you for the opportunity to answer it. Have a good day.